after me, brother. When we were children, you always had my back. You took all the blame when our father caught us doing things that drove him mad. Through the years I could lean on you when I messed up. I'd call you in the night, but I broke too many promises and we split up. Though I still need ya, you gotta save me now. I'm slipping so far down, it's only you I trust to set me free from this. I don't know how I got into this awful spot. I don't know where it ends, so I could use your helping hand tonight.
Okay, lay down. Lay down, baby.
Say that I'm sorry, I got sidetracked and I left you in the cold. I've seen your side of the story, I felt the drawback. My mistake took its toll. Finally, I have realized I was dead wrong. I wasn't thinking straight. No more. I still need ya. You gotta save me now. I'm slipping so far down. It's only you I trust to set me free from this. I don't know how I got into this awful spot. I don't know where it ends, so I could use your helping hand tonight. If I 'Cause even though we were broke as hell, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything. And I throw a coin down a wishing well. I wish I could feel it again, the way that I felt for you then. 'Cause even though I wouldn't change anything, girl. I wouldn't change anything, girl. No, I wouldn't change anything.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hunky Vape Global 20 live stream. I didn't have time to do the actual full production this week, so we're going to do the news live. Expect some dangle clacks. I'm going to be honest with you. All right. First off, time to get the music done, and we're going to hop right into the news. And as the saying goes, ain't nothing to it but to get into it. All right, so as you guys have probably heard by now, the FDA issued a marketing denial order for Juul Labs. So technically, they were supposed to take the products off the market. But we all know Juul is not a little petty mom and pop shop. They're not going to take this line down. So they went and sent all their lawyers to go file for a stay because they want their case heard in court. And if you looked at the news today, you'll see that they did get their stay ordered. But this is leaving all the small mom and pop shops with a big question on their hands. What happens if this thing goes to court and they do have to get rid of all their stuff? I mean, think about how it is for these people. They literally have thousands of dollars worth of inventory sitting on their shelves that might have to all go in the dumpster. So, and this is what was hitting the news yesterday. In the last 24 hours, it went from the mainstream news all saying, oh, well, Juul's all banned and it's gone, it's got to get rid of it. And now they have a stay. But that doesn't solve the problem for vape shops. So let's take a look and dive right in here. See what they're saying.
Smoke shops in Metro Detroit and across the country tonight are feeling the heat of a decision by the Food and Drug Administration. It is banning the sale of Juul e-cigarettes and other vaping products. 7 Action News reporter Darren Cunningham has more on the impact and what it means for local businesses. Darren.
The owner of this smoke shop in Midtown says 50% of his business is in vape. So the FDA ruling, he says, is set to put a damper on business, which he opened just months ago.
That's affecting us personally. That's all profit right there. That's all money that's just sitting on the shelf that we have to just pull out and throw in the trash.
Joseph Sakria, owner of Puff Club Smoke Shop in Detroit, reacting to the news the FDA banned Juul e-cigarettes and other products. He sells the brand and says the FDA is making a big mistake.
It affects the business. It affects people trying to quit smoking. They're trying to quit cigarettes people that have been smoking for over 30, 40, 50 years.
Sakria says if minors becoming addicted is the concern, that responsibility falls on greedy, unethical businesses selling to minors. Matthew Myers, president of the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, says the FDA's decision is the most important action the FDA has taken to reverse what he calls the youth e-cigarette epidemic.
Juul was almost single-handedly responsible for creating an epidemic among our nation's youth. Between 2017 and 2019, the number of adolescents who smoked e-cigarettes more than doubled. It was largely responsible because of Juul.
Juul Labs, the company behind Juul e-cigarettes, said that it would try and suspend the decision and that it's, quote, exploring all of our options under the FDA's regulations and the law, including appealing the decision and engaging with our regulator, end quote. Darren Cunningham.
Yep. There you have it right there. Well, that was last night's news. If we take a look at today, you'll see that the news is that Juul gets a temporary reprieve to keep selling their e-cigarette products. What's this stay mean? Well, it technically means that the products aren't banned at the present moment. The stay is only in effect until the court hears what Juul has to say about this issue to determine whether they have a valid legal case or not. So if the court decides that they don't have a valid case and the FDA is within their full rights to do this, the products are still banned. They could go to trial and the stay gets continued throughout the course of the trial. Who knows how long this trial is going to be? It could be days, weeks, or months even. Because the Juul invested heavily to complete their PMTA because they fully expected the FDA to authorize their products. I even reviewed the products that the FDA has already authorized on this channel. And if those products were authorized, why wasn't Juul? You can't say for some scientific reason Juul wasn't authorized. It's got to be a political move. And does the FDA have the purview to follow through with political motivated bans of products? Or are they legally obligated to follow the science and provide these products to the smokers like us that use them to not smoke anymore? All right. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here because, to be honest with you, Juul has never been a friend of the mom and pop vape industry, the consumer-driven vape industry. We all know this. So it is what it is. Unfortunately, it's a disaster for public health. And I wasn't the one to come up with that statement. Clive Bates even put it on there. FDA forces Juul to pull the most successful anti-smoking product ever. We all know that they wouldn't have gotten to be as popular as they are if they didn't work for people. It wouldn't have worked for me. I needed something like this. But it obviously worked for a lot of other people. And Twitter was blowing up yesterday with people that have never stood up to talk about vaping, complaining about what are they going to do now? That was their all-day vape. All right, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. There's going to be links added to the comment section down below. Feel free to take a look at them if you'd like to follow through and learn more about this whole situation with Juul. But we've got other news to cover. Every week, I sit down and I go through Google and I do the search for the Google News. I've got dozens of websites that I routinely check for postings about vaping news. And yesterday, the first so many pages were nothing but Juul. So I had to put an exclusion in to search for things that weren't Juul related. How about we take a look at Australia? They have had an onslaught of bad press about vaping. The Australian Medical Association, in addition to the American Medical Association, obviously don't like the idea of vaping products. They don't want to follow the science because they bought into the bias just like everybody else. Growing use of e-cigarettes could lead an increase in tobacco smoking. That's not what the data shows. We've all looked at the science and the data in previous episodes on here. The data shows smoking rates are plummeting and electronic cigarette rates are slowly growing. In some countries, they're growing very quickly. In some countries, like the United States, e-cigarette use is slowly starting to dwindle as well. But cigarette rates are plummeting faster than e-cigarette rates. It's because everybody knows this is the safer alternative product. Growing use of e-cigarettes could lead to increase in tobacco smoking. I don't believe it. Australia's peak medical body warns. Time for the bullshit meter. But there's a link in the description below if you guys want to follow through on this particular article. It isn't all bad news. I did find some sort of good news. Savage Council decides not to pursue vaping product restrictions. Savage City councilors decided not to pursue a proposal to restrict the sale of flavored electronic cigarette vape cartridges during their previous June 13th work session. They did a survey, and they're going to continue doing surveys. That's the wonderful thing about science. It never ends. If they complete a survey, guess what? They can start another one to continue monitoring activity. In prior Lake Savage area schools, a 2019 Minnesota student survey reported that 10.12% of high school juniors had used conventional tobacco within the last 30 days. 30% reported using electronic cigarettes and other forms of non-traditional tobacco in the last 30 days. These statistics are both higher than the state average of 8% and 28%. However, those are not current figures. The latest National Youth Tobacco Survey shows that daily vaping among teenagers is less than 1%. Just because you pick something up in the last 30 days does not mean that you're an actual vapor. And we all know kids do all kinds of crazy things. Kids try everything. And if it's the latest fad, I don't even want to get into all the crazy stuff and the stunts that they have out there with Twitter and more like Snapchat and all their little social media platforms. The latest fads are going to be the latest fads, and we need to treat them as such. Moving on. People have left comments on my channel lately that say that, the Democrats need to go, blah, 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 blah. This is horrible. Well, here we have an article that says Republican proposes tighter regulation on tobacco and vaping. It is truly a bipartisan issue. It isn't just Democrats and the Republicans. They're all doing it. See, there was our first dangle clock of the day. My apologies. This is a bipartisan issue, and there's no question about it. See, more dangle clocks. This is truly a bipartisan issue. And my comment reply to that person was the Democrats typically go for bans, whereas the Republicans typically go for these exorbitant taxes. Just like the last one that we barely skirted in the last federal budget, where they were literally going to tax nicotine by the milliliter. And a normal bottle that we get, a 1 liter bottle would have cost $65, now $100 because it's so hard to get, was going to literally cost over $5,000. Well, here's the latest article. Legislation has been introduced in the state assembly to create an adult use substances authority to oversee liquor, cannabis, alcohol, tobacco, and vaping. The new authority would develop registration and licensing procedures, as well as licensing requirements for all tobacco businesses, retail tobacco businesses, retail dealers, vapor product dealers, retail electronic cigarette stores, and anyone who sells tobacco, nicotine, or vaping products. This isn't the first state to go and do something like this. Alabama's already done it. They already have a basic folding of their tobacco and vaping products into the liquor control. So now the state has the authority to go into stores, verify that they're collecting the taxes, verify that they're doing the age checks that are supposed to be done, and verifying that they aren't selling anything that the FDA hasn't authorized. So nobody's talking about it, but this stuff is going on. And there are vape shops down south that have had to close because the FDA hasn't authorized any product. So unless you can show substantiating documentation that the products that you're selling have a current PMTA that is being processed, some of these places are being forced to close. Moving on. Iowa City schools to get new vape sensors. This is another plague that's been permeating throughout the news recently. Iowa City is one of the ones that have literally went and spent millions and millions of dollars on nothing more than fancy smoke detectors that notify the school staff that there's kids in the bathroom or in other places where they have these sensors installed that are vaping or smoking or who knows what else. Kids are going to do what kids are going to do. And I understand that they need to take control of the situation, because when the kids are in school, it's the school administrator's responsibility for the welfare of those children. But this isn't isolated to just the United States. Aussie schools install vape detectors inside bathrooms to alert teachers to children who are vaping. High schools across Australia installed silent vape detectors to catch students. The new tech triggers a silent alarm system that emails alerts to the teachers. Students are locked inside the bathroom so teachers can check for their contraband information. Their contraband products. My apologies. Every week I find a new school district that is touting about how they went and spent so much money going and installing these high-tech systems that literally, I don't understand how they can justify spending millions and millions of dollars to install nothing more than basic smoke detectors. And so, so maybe they hooked it up to a computer that emails or texts the teachers instead of, activating an audible alarm. But is this truly the best method to control these kids? Neither here nor there. It is what it is. Moving on, vape store coming to Hellertown Shopping Center. A store that sells vaping products and related products will soon be opening in the shops at Hellertown, according to signage outside of one of the shopping center's vacant units. Good Guy Vapes is a business that will soon occupy the vacant unit last leased by T-Mobile, which closed nearly 3.5 years ago. According to the information on the store locator page on the goodguyvapes.com, the Heller store that will be opening at 11 Main Street is one of dozens of Good Guy Vapes retailer outlets from Maine to South Carolina. This is the store I haven't even heard about. And it's nice to see that there still are some vape chains that are spread out over multiple states. And to be honest with you, if you had multiple stores, why wouldn't you set up in multiple states? Yeah, it's a pain in the butt to have to complete all the regulations and whatnot and the tax paperwork. But once you have all that systems in place, it's so easy to just add another location to what you already have going on. Some of you may not know out there, but vape stores literally have to compile a list of everything they sold, who they sold it to, every product they have in the store. They have to register where it came from, when they ordered it, and all that information goes to the ATF in the United States. It is truly a burden for anyone that is even considering opening up a vape shop, unless you plan on flying under the radar. One thing about Americans is they never give up. No matter what obstacles are put into their place, we will always continue to fight. I've visited plenty of vape shops that straight up tell me that they do not bother with any of that stuff. They are simply a retail outlet. That's what they file as. They collect taxes as a retail outlet. They leave it to the distributor to collect anything that the state requires. So it is what it is. Just because somebody institutes prohibition and codifies it into the laws of the state or the laws of the country is not going to reduce consumer demand or the availability of products. My entire lifetime, there have been products that have been outlawed and prohibited, but they were always available. and I always knew somebody that had access to it. And if you think that just because they codify something and make it illegal or ban it from sale in this country, it's not going to be available, that's an unrealistic expectation. All right, jumping back, since we talked earlier about Australia, here we have West Australia's misguided vaping move will be a public health disaster. The West Australian government is threatening to destroy the retail vape industry in Western Australia with massive fines for selling vaping products and nicotine-free liquids. Yeah, you heard that right. Nicotine-free liquids. And they still want to ban it. That doesn't make any sense. This stuff here is nothing more than glorified fog juice. The flavor profile is much tighter and much more accurate because of the fact that it's being used in a vape. But essentially, that's just fog juice. And nobody has a problem with having fog machines and fog juice at parties and concerts. It's already been tested. Safe for inhalation. Is it safe for inhalation at the concentrations that we consume? Only science in time is going to be able to prove that. But what we already know is Public Health England has enough science for them to say, as the public health authority for the entire country, the vaping harms cannot exceed 5% that of a combustible cigarette. That's something nobody can argue with. They can ignore it. They can try and lie about it. But the facts are the facts. Cancer Research UK has determined that regardless of what flavorings are in your e-liquid, the risk of cancer is only 1% that of smoking. Why hasn't these products proliferated even wider than what they already are? It's all about tax money. Honestly, that's what it boils down to. All right, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. Let's get back to this article we have here. But they are ensuring that only the black market and tobacco companies will ultimately benefit. Vape stores were informed of the crackdown by letter last month and were told that they could face up to $80,000 in penalties. The current legislation in Western Australia, the Tobacco Product Control Act 2006, bans the sale of devices that look like cigarettes. This doesn't look like a cigarette. Neither here nor there. Sorry, ad-lib commentary. It's required, otherwise this is considered copyright violation. Anyway, the current legislation in Western Australia, this has always been the case, but if it does begin these enforcement activities by cracking down on vaping-related goods, including individual components of vaping devices, batteries, and nicotine-free liquids, this would shut down vape stores across the state, leaving only the black market in operation. Just like any other drug that they've had a war on, just because you make it illegal does not stop its existence in your communities and in your society. Consumer demand does not care what the laws are. Consumer demand is based on everyone's individual choice that you cannot simply change because you make something illegal. The crackdown comes in response to the rise in youth vaping. A new initiative was recently announced to educate young people on nicotine addiction and chemicals in vaping products. Young people should be given accurate information to help them make informed choices, however. This campaign, based on New South Wales Health, Do You Know What You're Vaping campaign, is alarmist, exaggerates the risk, and is riddled with misinformation. There is no doubt that youth vaping is on the rise. Maybe down there. Not in the United States. The National Youth Tobacco Survey shows it's dropped over 60% in the last 2 years. There is no doubt that youth vaping is on the rise, however, is what they stated in this article. However, the rise is being driven almost exclusively by black market sales. The knee-jerk reaction by the health department to target legal shops will have no effect on youth vaping. My wife and I had a conversation about this just yesterday. And it's obvious. When you were growing up and you were underage, if you wanted something and really wanted it, one of your friends would be able to get it for you. And if they didn't get it themselves because they were also underage, they knew somebody who was of age who would get it for them. Take a look at the drinking rates down in Australia, the youth drinking rates down in Australia. Take a look at the youth drinking rates around the globe. It's quite obvious the age laws, tobacco 21, and the 21 age requirement for you to go buy alcohol hasn't stopped kids from getting access to it. And I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of the parents are the ones that are supplying it for the kids. Especially when you're talking about vaping stuff. My kids, well, except for one, is of age that they can make their own choices. But if my son came home and was smoking, I would do everything in my power to get him to stop smoking and do this instead. You can't expect miracles to happen. Just because you forbid a kid from doing something doesn't mean they're going to stop doing it. Let's be realistic. Continuing with the article, pervasively, deadly cigarettes will continue to be readily available at convenience stores, tobacconists, petrol stations, and corner shops across the state. The new proposal leaves the black market free to expand and continue selling unregulated, high-nicotine disposable vapes to young people. Sorry. If you're trying to listen to this just to hear the whole article, you're going to be disappointed because I got commentary on just about everything nowadays. Take a look at England. England has a big problem right now because they follow the TPD. They have a 20 milligram per milliliter cap on vaping products over there. And the big problem they have right now is people want more. You have convenience stores, corner shops, and just regular stores that are literally getting their hands on imported 50 milligram per milliliter concentration disposable vapes. And it's becoming a big problem over there. The vapors are up in arms and they completely hate disposable vaping products simply because of how bad this problem is. And they see what has happened in the United States and what prohibitive regulations have followed because of it. And they're terrified. And I don't blame them for being terrified. But it is what it is. You cannot stop consumer demand. If people want it, somebody's going to sell it to them. As long as there's a way to make money on it, they're going to sell it. And the more that you make things restrictive, the more profit there is and the more motivation there is for black market organizations to fulfill consumer demand. There's a wonderful program on Netflix about the drug war and why it can never be won. It's called The Economics of Drug Wars. You got to check it out. Very interesting, very enlightening. And now I completely understand why things are the way they are. Moving on with the article once again. It should also establish policies to allow approved high-quality vaping products as consumer goods for adult smokers to help them quit, following the example of New Zealand and the United Kingdom. This would allow basic consumer protection, which is absent from the black market. There is no protection of anything in the black market. They could taint anything, and who's going to go after them? Nobody even knows that it exists until it's too late. Protections should include mandated ingredients lists, should ensure chemical additives are safe, and enforce strict minimum age of sale laws, like those which apply to combustible cigarettes and alcohol. I love it when these people write these articles and they really don't have a clue what the actual laws already are on the books in their location. but that's neither here nor there. Cracking down on small businesses who help tens of thousands of adult West Australians remain smoke-free will be a public health disaster. This ill-advised government plan will have the opposite effect to what is intended. And there's countless countries that have already done this and are prime examples for them to learn by. Something you were taught as a kid. If you don't learn from history, you're going to repeat it. In June, Dr. Colin Mendelsohn traveled to Dubai to speak on a panel at the World Vape Show about how vaping products can reduce smoking and improve public health. He declared that the show covered his travel and accommodation expenses, but he received no fees for speaking at the event. Here's his book. Very good read. Very enlightening. And if you know somebody that is smoking and believes all the misinformation that's out there, pick up the book and give it to them. Christmas is a couple months away, for all intents and purposes. Why not start shopping now? Pick up a book and give it to that smoker for Christmas. You might save their life. All right, moving on to the next story. Teens are going to do what teens are going to do. And if you ban nicotine vaping products, well, they're going to just experiment with something else. And here we go. Kind of ironic in the United States. They keep clamping down on tobacco harm reduction products, but they keep legalizing marijuana in all of its forms. So, unfortunately, you have to apologize. Somebody knocked on my door and the dogs are going nuts. All right. Psychosis, addiction, chronic vomiting. As weed becomes more potent, kids are getting sick. With THC levels close to 100%, today's cannabis products are making some teenagers highly dependent and dangerously ill. Elise was 14 when she first started vaping cannabis. They actually, in the New York Times, differentiated between nicotine vaping and cannabis vaping? Oh my. It didn't smell, which made it easy to hide from her parents. And it was convenient. Just press the fire button and inhale. After the second or third try, she was hooked. This was insane. Insane euphoria, said Elsie, who's now 18, and whose last name will be withheld to protect her privacy. Everything was moving slowly. I got super hungry. Everything was hilarious. But the euphoria eventually morphed into something more disturbing. Sometimes the marijuana would make Elsie feel more anxious or sad. Another time she passed out in the shower, only to wake up half an hour later. This was not your average weed. The oil and waxes she bought from dealers were typically about 90% THC, psychoactive component in marijuana. But because these products were derived from cannabis and nearly everyone she knew was using them, she assumed that they were relatively safe. She began vaping multiple times a day. Her parents didn't find out until about a year later. I'm not going to go and read the actual full article, but the long story short of this is the whole Avali situation in the United States was all because of black market THC products that were tainted with vitamin E acetate. That's what caused the lung injuries. Had nothing to do with nicotine vaping. It all boils down to the fact the damage and the danger is in the dosage. If this product gets taken off of the marketplace and people are making their own versions of it, you think the black market's not going to take advantage of teenagers that want it? That are going to make 250 milligram per milliliter solutions because they don't know any better? Us vapors that make our own, we know exactly how to make safe products. But you think the drug dealer on the corner that's selling it just to make a buck is going to know how to keep it safe? Or are we going to start seeing even more stories about fentanyl-laced products out on the market? Governments have a real opportunity and a real solid motivation to come up with reasonable regulations for these products. There's 82 million people using vaping products every day to not smoke. And if you don't have a legalized framework in place where you can access safe, regulated products, black market doesn't care about who lives, who dies, who thrives. All they care about is getting you coming back for the next shipment. That's their only motivation. All right. Some industry news. Xinhui Biotech is among the first to secure China's new e-cigarette production license. If you've been following the news at all, if you've watched any of my previous stories, you'll know that China clamped everything down, and China Tobacco literally took over the entire vaping market over in China. If you want to continue manufacturing vaping products in China, and you're not doing it for the black market, then you need to apply to the regulation authority to be able to have a license to sell your products. And you have to follow the registration and the requirements and the laws that they have there. Essentially, flavors have been limited to hardly anything. They used to have a complete list of different ingredients. Those have been cut way back. And now we have an actual company that has now gotten formal certification from China Tobacco to be able to manufacture vaping products. It's called the State Tobacco Monopoly Administration in China, who regulates everything. There'll be a link in the description below if you guys want to follow through on this. I know people get upset when I talk about China, but realistically, I mean, they do manufacture over 90% of the products that are out on the market. So if you don't talk about them, you're basically keeping yourself in the closet, locked up away from the truth. All right, moving on. City removes smoking restrictions for tobacco vape shops. Wow, this is really weird because we hardly ever get to see stories like this. People will now be able to smoke or vape in tobacco and electronic cigarette shops in Manhattan. With a 3-2 vote, the Manhattan City Commission on Tuesday added those shops to the list of exemptions in the ordinance that prohibits smoking and vaping. The city had prohibited smoking and vaping in places of employment and public places, including smoke shops. Like, that makes any sense. Voters approved an indoor smoking ban in the referendum in 2008. The commission added vaping to the ordinance in 2019. The shops are exempt as long as they do not share an enclosed common space, ventilation system, or any other system the city administrator said compromises the rights of non-smokers. Also, 65% of sales have to be of that product to count as a tobacco or electronic cigarette shop. I've seen plenty of convenience stores that skirt the law and literally spread their products out all over the place and add a bunch of other options so that they can get incorporated into exemptions that are already on the books in different locations. Well, a little bit of good news. If you live in Manhattan, at least. Data, adult smoking continues downward trend. Vaping remains nearly unchanged. What's that tell you? Vaping does not lead to smoking. Vaping kills smoking. Both nationally and in Minnesota, more and more adults are quitting smoking, according to the latest data. The Minnesota Department of Health says in 2018, 15.1% of Minnesotans reported smoking, but in 2020 that number had decreased to 13.8%, a downward trend that mirrors the national one, which decreased from 21.2% in 2011 to 15.5% in 2020. However, adult e-cigarette use, also known as vaping, remains nearly unchanged at 4.9% of Minnesotans adult reporting current use in 2020. That's similar to 5% in 2018. You know, I love how these people don't actually factor things in. I went and I took a look at Minnesota's population. And guess what? It's not the same in 2018 and 2020. The population has grown. So the actual number of people that have quit is actually more significant than if you just straight up look at the percentage. But the facts remain. This is killing smoking. And that's a good thing. All right, moving on to the next story. Thousands of illegal vaping products seized in Crackdown. Thousands of illegal disposable vapes have been seized across the borough in the week of action from trading standards. I talked about this earlier. In the UK, this is a big problem over there. The consumers want the 50 milligram per milliliter of nicotine disposable vapes. So corner shops and retail stores are meeting that consumer demand. Last week, the council's trading standards team visited 50 premises, and non-compliant vapes were found at 74% of them. Over 2,700 vapes were seized or voluntarily surrendered. Most were super strength vapes, aka 50 milligram per milliliter. Provided more than the typical 600 puffs per vape legal in the UK market. Of course they're going to be. Here's the Spino. And here's the other ones I've been doing. They were like 4,000, 5,000 puffs. You want to help protect the environment? How about removing the ridiculous puff counts? These contain batteries and metal and plastics. And if these are a disposable product, why on earth would you want there to be 10 times more of these than there really needs to be? Sorry, I can't help but the commentary when it comes to this. The majority of the devices allow 550 to 600 puffs at 2% nicotine e-liquid, which equates to 40 to 50 cigarettes per day. That's what I used to smoke. So they literally want you to buy a disposable every single day? Why can't you buy one that's going to last you at least a week? As a general rule, if the listing states more than 600 puffs, they will not be suitable for the UK market, as they will have a capacity greater than 2 milliliters and most likely a higher nicotine content than is permitted. There'll be a link in the description if you want to check it out. I got to move on. This always cracks me up when I see this kind of stuff. How to get the most out of your vape pen. Do you think that this was actually written by somebody that vapes? Or do you think this was just a puff piece that somebody had to write? Let's take a look. All right. News America's New York, New York, Thursday, June 23rd, 2022. In recent years, there has been a surge in the popularity of vaping. One of the reasons is that individuals have switched from traditional cigarettes to sophisticated vaping devices like vape pens. Is this some recycled content? Vape pens? The only people using vape pens are the people that are smoking the marijuana oil. Let's be honest. It has nothing to do with nicotine vaping. Anyway. Vape pens aren't just simple to use, but also lightweight and inconspicuous, with oil cartridges emitting less odor than smoking the plant. They're talking about marijuana. If this is your first time using a vape device, you're probably wondering how to make the most of it. And this article is going to cover it all for you. Listen, if you're interested in how to use this to quit smoking, this is not the article for you. Moving on. Some more industry news. Phelim joins Carbon Disclosure Project as part of S'more's drive to tackle climate change. Climate emergency, they called it. Interesting. Phelim, the flagship atomization technology platform belonging to S'more International, the world's largest vape manufacturer, has joined the Carbon Disclosure Project as part of its parent company's listing. Press release to follow. Listen, anything we can do to protect the environment is a good thing, especially when it doesn't cost you any more money. Common sense legislation can save the environment by not requiring England to have one of these bought every single day. Is that what's going to happen when they make changes to their regulations because they're no longer part of the EU? Only time's going to tell. Moving on. Like I said, they've been cracking down over there on these shops that are selling the 50 milligram per milliliter nicotine vaping cartridges. And here's a story that was just published. Shop which sold illegal vapes and cigarettes to remain shut until next court hearing. The magistrates have agreed that a shop that sold illicit cigarettes and illegal vapes should remain closed until the next court date after the shopkeeper asked to adjourn the case to get legal representation. Lincolnshire Trading Standards is prosecuting Tatry Store at 17 West Street, Boston, after test purchases and discovery of an electronic hide. That's what happens. When you prohibit something that the consumers want, stores are going to sell it. And if it's not legal for them to sell it, well, then they're going to create little stashes here, little stashes there, because they get busted. They don't want to get caught with all of it at once. Moving on. This is going to be a link in the description for any of the articles that we covered today. They'll be updated after the live is done. Moving on to some vape science. New study. UK vaping regulations based on risks of vaping relative to smoking provide lessons for the U.S. Not just the U.S., for the entire world. That's the advantage of science. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're on. The science is still the same. So, as long as there aren't any other factors in play, it's going to tell you relatively the same thing. Dangle clack won't stay zoomed in. Follow my mouse. My apologies. I'll correct that before the next one. As the federal government and states of California consider taxing and imposing new or stricter regulations on vaping products, particularly flavored products, Roger Bate, Ph.D., finds that there are important lessons U.S. policymakers can learn from the tax and regulatory environment in the U.K. in a new study released today by a nonpartisan Pacific Research Institute. While the UK imposes taxes and regulations based on the relative risks of vaping versus smoking, the U.S. approach focuses on the absolute risks of vaping products alone. Said Bate, preventing new product denies the ability of people to try new products that could improve their lives or reduce their relative risks. Yes, we all know that there are risks from vaping, but they are significantly lower compared to smoking. I talk about this all the time. 480,000 Americans die every single year because they smoke. If this product is 95% safer, why hasn't it been widely adopted universally across the continent? If it's even 5% safer, some people argue it's not 95. We don't know that for sure. If it's even 5% safer, you know how many lives you can save by pushing this as opposed to letting them continue to smoke? There'll be a link in the description below if you guys want to check this out. I covered this story before, but it seems to be lingering out there. French expert says nicotine does not cause cancer. Ask Filipino doctors to consider smoke-free alternatives. Why am I covering this again, even though I covered it last episode? Well, quite frankly, most people think that nicotine causes cancer. That's why the FDA authorized very low nicotine cigarettes as a benefit to public health. We all know the truth. It's not the nicotine that kills people. It's the tar in the cigarettes. It's the carbon monoxide that you get when you combust tobacco and breathe that in. These are the things that cause permanent harm. There's a link in the description, once again, to this French expert talking about how nicotine does not cause cancer. All right. The right to health means the right to tobacco harm reduction. This is published in Filter magazine. And it basically covers the facts like we've talked about numerous times before. A brutal culture war is raging on the role of harm reduction to hasten the end of smoking. But as the Twitter storms rumble on, the evidence is mounting that safer nicotine products, such as vapes, pouches, snus, and heated tobacco, are helping millions of people around the world switch from combustible cigarettes and other risky tobacco use. Cigarettes are a harmful delivery mechanism for nicotine, and nicotine doesn't cause tobacco-related diseases. Options now available deliver nicotine at vastly reduced risk. More Swedes use snus than smoke cigarettes, resulting in the lowest lung cancer rates of any EU country. In the United Kingdom, vaping is supported by health authorities as a cessation tool. Around 7% of adults, 6 million people, vape. A year-on-year increase in vaping is matched by a decline in smoking. That's why I call bullshit on that Australian article saying that increased vaping means increased smoking. Not true. I'm not going to read this whole article, but I did want to point it out for you guys to take a look at. Very well written, and it covers what we talk about every single week on this very topic of the Global 20. All right, we talked about the Clive Bates, the counterfactual article, and the FDA forces Juul to pull the most successful anti-smoking product ever already. But I got another one for you. Why banning Juul will not save lives. The FDA's decision to take the most popular electronic cigarettes off the market will have unintended consequences for public health and for criminal justice. I've covered it on the news before. You saw these teenage kids get tased and taken down for vaping. Meanwhile, around the block, there's a kid smoking, and they don't bother him. This chastisation of vaping has got to end. We need to get the truth out there and the benefits that this can have on modern society. We need more articles written like this, telling the truth. There's going to be a link in the description below if you want to check it out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up on an hour now. So I think it's time for us to kind of wrap things up a little bit. If anybody's interested in having a conversation, ask me any questions, please feel free to leave those in chat. Otherwise, it's going to be time to wrap this up for today. I truly appreciate all of you coming around for the live chat today. I have to go up to camp and clean the trailer up there this weekend, so unfortunately I didn't have time to actually go and do the normal Global 20 that I cut down into a 20-minute segment. But I did want to get the information out there for all of you to know what's going on. Vaping is truly wonderful, and it saved my life and continues to save other people's lives. Some of us choose not to give up our nicotine habit because we benefit from it. There's plenty of science out there that tells you this is a benefit to a certain group of people, depending on what situation you have and what conditions you have. And for those of us that smoked for 30, 40 years, nicotine became part of our coping mechanism to deal with life. So that's why we choose to continue to use it. I truly appreciate every single one of you coming out. Let's take a look at the chat here. Heen Curry. Hey, Hunky, greetings from South Africa. Where's my thingy here? Let me put this up on screen. Make sure that's on. There we go. I got some things working properly. Big tobacco has more power in society. Yeah. Big tobacco does have a lot of power in society. They stayed quiet the whole time small mom and pop vape shops have been getting obliterated off the marketplace. The whole time that all their e-liquids were being mandated into regulatory hell. No question about it. And they're the ones that are going to survive this. Hal Grumwell, pleasure to have you here. You're very welcome, sir. I'm glad to be able to do my little part to help the vaping community, because we truly are a community of people that share a common trait of smoking, and now we're not smoking anymore because we found something way better and way more enjoyable. So, I think that wraps it up for today. I truly appreciate all you guys coming out. And put some music back on. And we're going to wrap it up for today. My wish as always, peace, love, and a hunky vape to stay away from combustion. Have a great day, everyone.
Against it all, but made it through the day, 'cause I found my way. I found my way. In bad times, I know I'll be okay, 'cause I found my way. Cause I found my way. Cause I found my way, my way, my way, my way, my way. Cause I found my way, my way, my way, my way, my way. I found my way, I found my way. I was in the dark against it all, but made it through the day, 'cause I found my way, I found my way. In bad is coming down. Fall